It was the feud that sent fans into a panic. How could Yellowstone continue without John Dutton III? For 5 seasons, Kevin Costner spearheaded the show despite it being an ensemble cast. Let's call it for what it is. Everyone tuned in to watch what John Dutton would do with the Montana ranch. Who's he going to have it out against today? Who has it out for him? And all that jazz. And then came the pivotal day in 2023 when it was announced that the star of the show would not be returning for the second half of Season 5. Rumors of a feud between Costner and series creator Taylor Sheridan had been brewing for a while now. Still, no one really thought too much about it. Yellowstone was good for both of them. A revival series for Costner and a hit for Sheridan. Surely neither of them would kick a gift horse in the mouth, right? But then the day we'd been dreading. Kevin Costner announced his exit from the series, and Paramount confirmed it. Through it all, everyone only had one question in mind. Is this really the end? And who do we blame if it is? Why couldn't Costner and Sheridan work it out? Kevin Costner had reportedly made it clear to Sheridan and the team that if his requirements weren't met, he'd walk out. Costner wouldn't be the first icon in Hollywood history to have made such a vivacious claim, but he might just be one of the very few who didn't get their way. Paramount is an award-winning network, and Sheridan is a renowned series creator. Between the two, there's no shortage of funds. Rumor has it that more money was something Costner had been asking for. You have to remember, however, that despite Yellowstone featuring an ensemble cast, Costner was the highest-paid actor. This fact makes sense in hindsight, given that he held the most star power and the series revolved around him. Then why wasn't he given more money? This was just one of the reasons why Costner chose to walk away from set. There were rumored to be a horde of issues. Next came creative differences with Sheridan, and this was something that the series creator refused to compromise on. You have to remember here that before Yellowstone, Sheridan held a career on Sons of Anarchy. Apparently, the biggest point of contention between Sheridan and the crew on his former show had to do with creative differences. Another interesting fact here is that Sheridan had been sitting on the neo-Western script for a long time before Paramount picked it up. Before going to the network Yellowstone would call home, Sheridan had pitched the idea to HBO. There, he faced a slew of criticisms from network execs who wanted to bring about a lot of changes in the script. Altogether, it was just too much for Sheridan, who eventually moved on to Paramount. So, more money might not have been an issue. While Costner was already netting reportedly millions per episode of Yellowstone, Paramount could find some wiggle room in their budget to appease the star of the show. That might be because money was primarily the network's concern. Sheridan wasn't paying out of pocket. What did affect him, however, was creative control. Now that we've talked about Sheridan and his unwillingness to give up creative control, let's talk about how Costner has a long-standing history of spearheading projects he's cast in. Costner has been a prominent figure in Hollywood for decades at this point, with a number of successful films on his resume. Everyone's seen at least one or two of Costner's greatest hits, right? Then again, everyone's also watched a couple of his flops, too. Reportedly, Yellowstone wasn't the first set where Costner had created problems. There'd been issues in the early 2000s when the star was working on another project. Apparently, Costner and the director just didn't see eye to eye on the script. There were a few rumors that suggested that Costner had approved the first script and then refused to budge with the new script after the network made a couple of changes to it. This delayed the film's release substantially, even though Costner and the director later made up with one another. The script, by the way, had to be compromised on to appease both the network and Costner. This wasn't the case in 2023 when it was between the Hollywood icon and Taylor Sheridan. Unfortunately, the Hollywood icon has a history of taking charge of projects, and another example that comes to mind would be Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. The film is best remembered today as one of the worst adaptations of Robin Hood in the history of Hollywood. That fact covered up the drama that unfolded behind the scenes, where apparently Costner would have repeated meltdowns. Besides just starring in the project, Costner had also invested a lot of his money into it. This allowed him to sit down in the director's chair from time to time. Costner was also given a lot of authority over how Waterworld panned out. By the way, the movie was one of the worst flops in the history of cinema. While there isn't much to suggest that Costner had acted like a diva during the filming of Waterworld, there's a lot that suggests he was as rigid as they came. The Hollywood celebrity was bent on making sure the project was one of the longest films in the history of Hollywood, and that became the #1 reason why critics panned it. All in all, we have to admit a few things here before we move on to who's actually to blame for Costner and Sheridan's falling out. Sheridan wasn't about to budge on creative control, and neither was Costner. Where was Paramount in the middle of all this? The network was trying its best to come up with a solution that would appease everyone. Apparently, they didn't want Costner walking away from Yellowstone because it was a multi-million-dollar production, one of the highest-rated television shows in Paramount's history. They needed Costner just as much as they needed Sheridan. The director had received a green light just a few months prior for 6 upcoming projects. In the end, however, Paramount realized that there was only so much they could do, and the decision to budge or not ultimately rested on Sheridan's shoulders. It's also important to mention here that the series creator wasn't exactly thrilled with Costner's announcement that he would leave the set either. For one, Yellowstone was his pride and joy, and two, he'd already planned out the next 2 seasons for the show. That's right, Sheridan had originally planned on Yellowstone being a 7-season neo-western drama, and was less than thrilled with the idea of having to wrap it up with season 5. Could Yellowstone have continued without Kevin Costner? According to Kelly Riley, who plays Beth Dutton on the show, Yellowstone ended in the exact way Sheridan had planned it. She claimed to have had a conversation with the series creator back in 2018 when they were filming the first season. Therein, she stated that Sheridan had revealed the ending to her, and it was always meant to end with John Dutton III in a casket. At least, that's what Kelly claims. Elsewhere, other stars of the show claimed that the finale was one of the most action-packed and thrilling finales in the history of television. Cole Hauser, who plays Rip Wheeler on the show, told E.T. that fans didn't know what they were in for with the finale. Ian Bohen went ahead and called it the best finale in the history of finales. All of this, except the revelation that John Dutton would die in the series finale, were statements the cast had made to publications in the days leading up to the release of the final few episodes. This was, of course, to create hype for the final season. This was also to appease fans who had taken to Reddit to share their concerns over what would happen to the series lead now that there, wasn't one. Fans of the series had posted more than a few anxious threads on Reddit, suggesting that maybe John Dutton's fate in the epic western would be reduced to nothing more than a side character's fate because of Costner's feud with Sheridan. This was as valid of a concern as any because Sheridan wouldn't be the first series creator to have taken out his frustration on a former lead via his show. Everyone here remembers what happened to Charlie Sheen's character, Charlie, on the sitcom 2.5 Men, right? For some context, Sheen had allegedly been hard to work for a long time. Series creator and director Chuck Lorre had put up with just about everything because, at the end of the day, Sheen was his leading man and the show would have been nothing without him. That's all fair enough. But then one day, apparently, Sheen arrived on set drunk, picked a fight with everyone, and the screaming match ended with Lorre and Sheen throwing hands. This caused a massive rift between the series creator and the lead, one that they couldn't just hash over. Sheen was fired right then and there, and Lorre continued the show with Ashton Kutcher. Did the show regain its former glory? Not really. But Lorre claimed that it wasn't about making money anymore. In the sitcom's finale, he stuck it to Sheen one last time by ultimately killing off his character in the most insane way possible. Sheen was less than thrilled with how his character's demise was handled on the show. He even complained that Lorre shouldn't have taken out his frustration on him via the show, calling it a petty move. Then again, we have to remember here that it was his show, and Lorre could do just about whatever he wanted with Charlie Sheen's character. The actor didn't hold any real authority over it. While the feud between Costner and Sheridan was a lot less dramatic than the one we just talked about, it was as contentious as feuds go. In their case, Costner claimed that if his demands weren't met, he'd walk out. And he did. However, Costner later walked right back on set, asking Sheridan if there was any way he could give John Dutton III the send-off that he deserved. Yep, that's right. A few months after announcing his departure from the show, and a few months after Sheridan had already written the script for the finale and announced Season 5's Part 2 as the final season, Costner had his people reach out to Paramount. Apparently, the actor had a moment to reflect, and that's when he realized that maybe he'd made a rash decision. Allegedly, he wanted to come back and finish what he'd started, giving John Dutton III space away from their feud. Ultimately, it was a feud between the actor and the series creator, and it had nothing to do with the Dutton family patriarch. But what did Sheridan do when he received word that Costner wanted to come back? He told his reps that he wasn't interested anymore. Paramount had already made it clear that Costner was departing from the project with no bad blood between them. Later on, Sheridan confirmed the fact as well, suggesting that he had better things to do than worry about Costner. He was indifferent to the actor. That indifference seeped over to the finale, and he told Costner's reps that he'd already written the script and wasn't about to change anything. Allegedly, a few episodes of the finale had already been filmed as well. Bringing Costner back on board would have not only meant refilming the episodes that were already shot, but also paying Costner's high salary again. Then again, fans complained that the network still had to give Costner a salary anyway. That's primarily because Costner's agents had worked out a contract with Paramount that suggested that even if the actor wasn't on screen, he would still get his usual salary. Whether the star received the exuberant sum for the final season where he was literally lying cold or not, we don't know. What we do know is that Sheridan wasn't about to budge. He didn't before, and he wasn't going to budge now either. The actor would later reveal in an interview with E.T. that while he wasn't exactly thrilled with Sheridan's decision to keep him away from the finale, he hoped for the best for Yellowstone. This much suggested that Costner, and not Sheridan, had put the feud behind him. While it'd be fair to say that the Hollywood actor was being rigid initially, he was willing to let bygones be bygones in the end, and not let the bad blood between him and Sheridan impact the outcome of the show they'd both come to love. Meanwhile, Sheridan wasn't ready to let it go. Costner was immediately replaced. Could you ever imagine an alternate universe where Kevin Costner wasn't the star of Yellowstone? Most fans couldn't imagine a finale without him, much less the fact that there could be a possibility he wasn't John Dutton III. Sheridan is big on creating spin-offs, and with 1883 and 1923, one thing's clear, he loves the Dutton family. While both shows feature members of the Dutton family, they all ultimately revert back to the family in the present day, the one that's thriving in Montana. And that family is led by John Dutton, aka Kevin Costner. Obviously, one of the reasons why fans were holding their breath after the star announced he would be leaving was the fact that they just knew the show couldn't go on without him. While fans knew that for a fact, Sheridan was determined to prove everyone, especially Costner, wrong. The only way he could do that was by having a Hollywood actor on his show with even greater star power than Costner. Now, that sounds impossible, right? But everyone here would agree that Matthew McConaughey could have worked just as well, maybe even better, as a series lead. Of course, we have to be realistic here. He doesn't give the vibe of having 3 adult kids, a feud with one of them, and even a grandfather to a teenage boy. It's true that Sheridan was never planning on recasting the role of John Dutton to anyone else, perhaps because he knew that would never work. Then again, the series creator thought that the next best thing would be to have a new lead for Yellowstone. In hindsight, there couldn't be a better choice than McConaughey. But why wasn't he in the final season then? Here's what happened. Paramount had been scouting the actor for a while now, and when space opened up on Yellowstone, they offered him the lead for the finale. Apparently, negotiations for McConaughey leading Yellowstone fell through almost immediately. But that was a mutual decision. Kevin Costner could never be replaced. Ultimately, they came up with another deal, arguably a better one. This new deal suggested that McConaughey would take up the role of the leading character in another one of Sheridan's spin-off series, or maybe a standalone away from Yellowstone. But then how come we didn't see the actor in the final season of Yellowstone in some capacity? And why hasn't he yet been cast in any one of Sheridan's spin-off series? There's a reason for this, and it's a pretty obvious one. McConaughey decided to up and leave Paramount Studios in much the same way as Costner did. Sheridan might or might not have had a great part in Costner's exit, but he certainly messed up with McConaughey. A little backstory here. Yellowstone's final season came to us a little later than expected. By a little, we're talking almost 2 years out. Besides the fact that Costner had walked out and Sheridan had to redo the script, there was also the SAG writer's strike going on. The strike pretty much delayed every project in Hollywood, and Yellowstone was no exception. This led to a lot of impatience on the fans and the network side. In Sheridan's case, it also led to McConaughey getting a little on edge. The actor had stated that he would commit to any project Sheridan offered provided that he get to see the final script first. Apparently, McConaughey was as big of a fan as any of Sheridan's work and eager to be cast as the lead in any of his series, Yellowstone or otherwise. Sounds simple enough, right? All Sheridan had to do to nail the leading star in a project was give him a script. Now, fans of Sheridanverse know that the series creator churns out scripts on a weekly basis with the most spin-offs and seasons in Paramount's history. However, because of excruciating circumstances with Yellowstone, Sheridan just couldn't seem to find the time to sit down and write the whole script for McConaughey's project. Apparently, this was what made the actor walk away from the project, whichever one it might have been in the end. With his exit, Sheridan started working exclusively on Yellowstone, working on the final season, and potentially setting up for further spin-offs. Concurrently, he started working on The Madison, a standalone series that features a family that moved from New York to the Madison Valley. Fans believe that this would have been the project that McConaughey would have ultimately been offered. You know, if Sheridan hadn't dragged his feet. In any case, the project is now being led by another Hollywood icon, Michelle Pfeiffer. Fans are happy with this choice, and also with the entire ensemble cast for the new series, which includes Suits' Patrick J. Adams. However, much like the final season of Yellowstone, fans are still waiting for a release date for this new series. One of the actors of the new show let it slip that a couple of episodes had already been filmed, giving fans hope for a 2025 release date. Christine had given Costner an ultimatum. And now back to Kevin Costner and why he left Yellowstone. That's right, despite already talking about salaries and creative controls, we still don't know the real reason behind Costner's departure. Again, that's because one reason wasn't presented to us, and maybe there never was one reason in the first place. Maybe there'd always be a collective of reasons which led to the actor's departure from set. Threat of losing his family could be considered a pretty major one. Yep, apparently, Costner would have to spend a majority of his time in Montana while filming Yellowstone. The series would churn out a season every year, which meant that as soon as they were done filming one season, Costner was back on a plane headed to Montana to film another. He wasn't the only one, obviously, and everyone else who was working on Yellowstone from the cast to the crew had to put up with a lot of sacrifices in their personal life for the show. But that didn't mean that it wasn't hard on their families. And in Costner's case, rumor has it that his wife Christine just couldn't take it anymore. Costner and Christine shared 2 teenage children together, and apparently Christine had given him an ultimatum. It was either Yellowstone or them. While tabloids made it seem really dramatic, a source close to the couple confirmed that there'd been problems in their marriage for a long time. In any case, Christine believed that Costner should work on solving those issues before heading back to Montana, and the actor agreed. The only person who didn't agree in this case, allegedly, was Sheridan. In hindsight, he had a project to oversee which didn't just include Costner, although he was the leading man. This led to even more tensions with the cast and the crew, and Costner believed that he should be given some time away from Yellowstone to mend things back home. Some fans believed that just like Christine, Sheridan gave Costner an ultimatum too. It was Yellowstone or going back home. In the end, we know what Costner chose, although it wasn't the happy ending you'd expect. The couple eventually announced their decision to part ways in what's now being hailed as one of the messiest divorces in Hollywood history. Fans of the actor would remember that Costner has a long-standing history with messy divorces, with his first one being one of the most costliest divorce settlements in Hollywood history. Allegedly, Christine was trying to break the record, but Costner wasn't about to make the same mistake twice. His killer legal team stepped in, stopping Christine from receiving the divorce settlement that she'd been hoping for. In any case, it's been a while since the two have split, and both seem to have moved on. Christine has moved on with a former neighbor of the couple and a rumored former friend of Costner. The actor, on the other hand, was just seen on a date with none other than Jennifer Lopez. That's right, paparazzi managed to snap a picture of the two of them while they were at a party together, and there have been rumors that the two have been talking non-stop. This might have a lot to do with the fact that both Costner and Lopez know what it's like to go through a messy divorce, with Lopez's divorce from Ben Affleck still being worked through. Was Horizon the reason Yellowstone ended? Fans of Kevin Costner were sad to watch him go, but they rejoiced in the fact that they'd see the cowboy actor in another cowboy role pretty soon enough. A little backstory is warranted here. Horizon had been on Costner's mind since the 90s. That's right, the actor had the script for his neo-western ready for a long time. Then, of course, he got busy with several other projects along the way. It was hard to find the right team for the project and a production company that was the perfect fit for him. Through it all, however, Costner never gave up on Horizon. Some of Yellowstone's more cynical fans were willing to argue that Costner left Yellowstone after gaining enough star power as a cowboy in today's audience. This rumor was quickly disproved by the fact that Costner had been working on Horizon while working on Yellowstone, too. So it was never about the project he preferred or the fact that he left Yellowstone because Horizon got picked up. He was willing to work on both. But obviously, he couldn't. Apparently, once Horizon was in its very final stages of being finalized, Costner told Paramount that he'd need time to work on the movie series. Yep, Horizon was supposed to be a multi-part series leading up to the Civil War and its aftermath. Of course, the network and Sheridan didn't agree. But this was Costner's passion project we're talking about. He had to see it through. Unfortunately for the Hollywood superstar, Horizon didn't win over audiences like he'd hoped. The film was panned, and that was when Costner announced that the next few installments in the multi-part project would be released later than hoped. It was also when he had his people reach out to Sheridan again, asking if he could come back to give John Dutton a proper send-off. We know now that Sheridan told Costner to take a hike. Do you think that was the right move, considering the absolute mess that was Yellowstone's finale? Or do you think Sheridan should have sucked it up for the greater good? That is, giving the fans the finale they deserved. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and we'll see you here again with another video soon enough.